Hey, what is up, guys? It is Card Shuffler 99 here, and today I'm going to be teaching you guys a Penn and Teller card trick. Now, this is not something they performed, more so something that actually fooled them. Now, this is something that a lot of people see to be sort of controversial because what happened was, if you haven't actually seen it, we're going to put a link down in the description because obviously most of you guys probably haven't seen it. His name is Ivan Amode, so this is definitely something you guys are going to want to learn because it's definitely something you guys are going to want to perform, especially in a party environment. So if you have a lot of spectators, you want to perform this. Obviously, I don't have that many spectators with me right now, so I can't actually perform it for you guys. But definitely go watch it, and I can sort of walk you guys through the entire idea of how this is going to work. Okay, so once again, this is sort of controversial because what happened was Penn and Teller sort of had the idea, and they had the idea correct. In my opinion, they were actually revealing it correctly. But if you don't know how Penn and Teller Fool Us actually works, there are judges backstage who are actually judging whether or not Penn and Teller get it right. Because obviously, Penn and Teller are coding ideas to the magician, right? They don't flat out just tell them everything that's going on. They'll put in code words so they can understand what's happening. So sometimes the magician has no idea what they're saying, obviously, because Penn and Teller think they have it right. They're coding something, but obviously, because if that's not the actual method that Penn and Teller are coding, what's happening is the magician has no idea what they're talking about. And if the magician has no idea what Penn and Teller are talking about, that's where the judges come in and say, no, you did not fool them, or yes, you did fool them, right? So that's, the judges really have the final say. It's not exactly Penn and Teller. So what happened here was Penn and Teller were getting it right, judges interrupt, and the judges say you fooled them. And that was the end of it. And that was sort of controversial, but essentially this did actually fool them, I guess you could say. So we're going to talk about that today. So let me just give you guys a quick run through of how this trick went down. So what you're going to do is you're going to start out with a normal deck of cards. And what he does, well, actually not a normal deck of cards. He's actually using a cards like with states on it. But you can use a normal deck of cards. So this is what he does. He's going to take the deck. He's going to split into two, half the Penn, half the Teller. He's going to have them shuffle them up. So I'll just shuffle the two together like this. So he's going to have them shuffle these cards up any way they want. What he's going to do is he's going to bring it back on stage. He's going to hand out the audience in groups of three. So he's basically going to say, take a card, you can mix them up. Take a card, pass it to the person next to you, and pass it to the person next to you. So basically he's grouping the people, right? So 3, 3, 3, where he's just giving out groups of cards. And then what he does essentially is he tells the person he gives the cards to mix them up, hand it to the person to your left. So every single person has a card, and then he's able to name, blindfolded, turned around, all the states, two from each group, in fact, until there's one person left standing from each pile of three. He then takes his blindfold off, looks behind, he points at each person, and he's going to say, you have this state, you have this state, you have this state. And that's really it. That's really the whole trick, and that essentially fooled Penn and Teller. So let's talk about the method on how you're going to go about doing this trick. So what you're going to need here is a deck of cards. Now, you can use a normal deck of cards like me, or you can go ahead and use something like a states deck or anything like that. Now, if you're going to perform this, I do recommend using a different deck. Now, there's a couple ways you can go about doing this. One, you can, in a sense, go... I guess you could go about it like this. What I'm doing here is I'm going about it by the value of the card. But you could, I guess, say that the normal deck of cards has essentially 52 different cards, correct? So I guess you could actually use a normal deck of cards and name out individual cards, even though some people might, two people might have the queen, obviously. So all that kind of stuff. But you might have to say queen of spades, queen of diamonds. But with states, they're all entirely different, like Georgia, Alabama. Like these are all completely different states. So if you think it's still sort of impossible to go about it with the deck of cards, go ahead and do that. You can also use a blank deck and write states down or write objects down or whatever you want to write. You can do anything like that. In fact, you can even get cards like apples to apples. They have cards with like objects on it, something like that, where you can sort of use those cards if you really want to as your objects, okay? But anyway, without any further ado, let's just talk about how this is actually going to be done. So you're going to have a normal deck of cards, okay? Normal deck. And this could be, obviously, like I said, the states deck, or it could be normal deck, doesn't matter. What you're going to have here is a separate pile. And this pile is essentially going to be split up in a specific way. So what we have here is ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, joker, joker. Now, this is his sort of setup pile, I guess you could say. So this is how, these are actually the cards he's handing out. Now, I'll explain how this is going to work a little bit later, but obviously you're not going to have it in order. I'm just doing this so you guys can follow along and it makes sense to you guys. What I have is ace, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, etc., right? So this is sort of my setup pile, and this is where we're going about it. So we got the setup pile here. So what's essentially going to happen here is this pile right here is going to stay in order, and he knows the order of it, okay? Obviously, they're mixed up, though, but that's where memorization comes in, right? So he knows the order of this pile right here. And again, it has to be, his pile is divisible by 3. I believe he had 18 spectators, meaning he's going to have 6 groups of 3 cards. Here, I believe I don't have 6. I think I have 5, okay? So that's important to know. So once again, this here is going to go underneath his stool. So it's sort of taped underneath the stool, I guess you could say, and it's taped there face up, essentially. So it's going to be, whether it's a pocket, whatever he has, it's there face up underneath the little pile. What he does here is he's going to start out by having this deck shuffled by Penn and Teller. So if you're performing this yourself, you can just shuffle it yourself. You can hand it around, have them shuffle it. You don't have to actually split it up based on the number of spectators you have. He obviously did 2 because obviously you have Penn and Teller. But goes about doing that. Now, he's actually going to have Penn select a card, but he doesn't actually do anything with this card. At the end of the trick, he just says, Penn, what state did you have? And Penn names the state, and he goes, you're correct. And that was it. So that's sort of useless, I guess, but we'll just leave it there because it did happen. What he's going to do is he's going to put this face up on the stool, and then he's going to ask Penn, come on up. Now, at this moment, when Penn's walking up, you'll see he puts his hand underneath the stool, okay? And he drags the deck off the table. So once again, he has this underneath the stool. He drags this off, and then he basically just set up his whole deck. Now, all the top cards here are his setup cards. So he knows how many cards are up here. So now, his pile is no longer shuffled, it's set up, okay? So once again, let me run through that really quick. Both piles have to be face up here. So you're going to have face up on the table, face up right here, drag it off on top, and you'll notice even Teller wasn't actually looking at Penn, or he wasn't actually looking at the magician when this was happening. He was actually looking at Penn because he was actually walking onto the stage. So now that this is set up, he's going to hand out piles of 3. So he's going to say, here's 3, here's 3, and he knows where the groups are, right? So he's handing out 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay, so he's handing out his piles, so that's important to know. Now, he knows what cards are in the first pile. He knows all the cards in the second, all the cards in the third, fourth, and fifth. Now, obviously, he has a 6th pile as well. So, we don't need this as just Penn's card, okay? Now, these can all be shuffled. It doesn't matter. These can be shuffled, right? These can be shuffled. It doesn't matter because either way, he knows what cards are in this pile, right? So he knows every single card here. So for example, he's going to call out random states. Say that basically he's going to just name a card. So for example, let's say he names the 2. Okay, so once again, I'm going based on values here. For example, like for example, 7, 8, 9. These are just value cards, right? He's obviously going based on states. So these are all going to be mixed up once again, they're all mixed up. So let's say they say 2, okay? He knows that obviously the 2 is in this pile because obviously no matter what, even though they're mixed up, which not really, they're not mixed up, but even though they get mixed up, he knows the 2 is in the first pile. So what he's going to do is he's going to name 2 cards from each of the groups, okay? So he's going to name 2 cards. Now, once he names the state of that group, they're going to basically sit down. So 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these are going to be discarded till he only has 6 left, okay? Now, because he knows which one he already named, he knows which one is left, right? He knows, okay, I named, for example, in this case we have the 3, so I named the ace and the 2 already. So I know the 3 is left in the first group. And he knows it by group. So obviously he knows who he gave the first group of 3 cards to. He knows these 3 people had it. So this guy is going to have the 3, right? So that's going, if hopefully that makes sense. Once again, with this one, he's got the 5, right? So 4, 5, 6. So he knows he named 4 and 6 already. So he knows the last one's got to be 5, right? And obviously that's just going to keep going through till the end of the deck. So that is essentially it, basically. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's definitely something you guys can perform, especially in a party setup when you have a lot of spectators going on. So, yeah, that's it for us today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. And this is Card Shuffler 99. Peace out.